No, this is just straight Maverick. Not even punishing Maverick, just green-white, let's go.
Yeah, he's got a light black splash for Deathrite Shaman and some sideboard cards. But other than that, basically green-white.
Now, Maverick is about as fair as the fair decks come.
Oh, yeah.
You'd have to think that Mud is not what he wants to see his opponent doing.
Yeah, probably not.
We'll start out. Gregg Spano starts on Glimmer Post, kind of a giveaway on his archetype. Maverick, one of the more unfair things that the deck can do, starts on a Green Sun Zenith for 0, getting Dryad Arbor.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, this could be Elves, probably, is what you're probably thinking if you're in Gregg's spot, right?
I would think my opponent was on Elves here, yeah. I would strongly think that. It's actually on Maverick. And getting a chance to look at Gregg's hand, we see Lodestone Golem, Chalice of the Void. Wasteland was the play for the turn. He's going to Chalice on 1.
And if your opponent is Elves, you think that this Chalice is pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, if I think my opponent's playing Elves, this is, right? You just got to feel real strong about this. Maverick, on the other hand, can play with a Chalice for 1, and a Chalice for 1 is not too scary for the deck.
No, especially after you've gotten to have your turn 1 where you get to play your Zenith and get your mana accelerator. At that point, Chalice, it stops some stuff, some key things like Swords to Plowshares that might remove Gregg's threats, like Koldath the Forge Master, Lodestone Golem. But for the most part, Gavin's operating with a bunch of 2 and 3 drops.
Now, if Gavin can get out in front, correct me if I'm wrong here, if he can say get a Knight of the Reliquary going, Knight fetching up Wastelands can do quite the number on the Mud deck.
Oh, certainly. I mean, especially since Gregg doesn't have the start that he really wants with an Ancient Tomb or a Cloud Post. He just has lands that make 1 mana.
Yeah, and here's a huge play from Maverick. So maybe, I'm going to back up when I said, okay, Maverick maybe has trouble with this matchup. Gaddock Teague cast by Gavin Dively.
I mean, that's good against a number of things in Gregg's deck, including Chalice of the Void, but the Chalice is already in play. Other than that, he has All Is Dust and a Karn Liberated and a Batter Skull. So not too many things that it shuts down.
He has a Staff of Nin that it could shut down.
Oh, okay, sure.
But you're right, not too many things. Most of his heavy hitters are things like Blightsteel, Steel Hellkite, Metalworker, Lodestone Golem, Forge Master. He can actually still get some of these spell artifacts into play with Lodestone Golem if he really needs them.
Right. With the Forge Master.
Yeah, with the Forge Master, yeah. He plays a second Chalice of the Void on 1 and actually misses his land drop.
Yeah, but you can't actually play the Chalice with a Teague in play.
Or yeah, Chalice, even though it only costs 2, Gaddock Teague also reads you cannot play spells with X in their mana cost.
Right.
So Judge pulling this one out. Question on what the resolution is, whether or not. I think we're fixing because Gavin drew a card right away, so he shuffles a card at random back into his deck. And he's going to redraw you back all the way up to Chalice of the Void. The shuffling a card at random from your hand back in your deck always feels a little weird, but it's actually, the rules are stated that like once a card goes from your deck and touches your hand, it's indistinguishable from the other cards, so you can't just be like, okay, put back the card you drew.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it was a random card or if like he actually knew which card he drew. I'm not sure.
If visually you can ascertain which, like, if it is, if it's still very clear visually which card it was, then you just put back that card. So no play then from Spano. Still doesn't have his 3rd land. And Gavin's going to he's going to get some free reign here. We'll see what he does with it. Knight of the Reliquary, I said before, that would close things out pretty quickly. It seems like most of his plays would be pretty good here.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the advantage of playing this Mud deck is that you have things like Ancient Tomb, which allow you to play big spells much quicker than you would be if you were playing a normal deck with colors, right? So you want to accelerate out things like Lodestone Golem, maybe Metalworker to play a bunch of spells in 1 turn, or Koldath the Forge Master, and Gregg doesn't really have a lot of this going on. So, like you said, Gavin basically has free reign at this point. There's a Chalice on 1, maybe hindering him a little bit, but I think for the most part, Gavin's in pretty good shape.
Yeah, Maverick isn't one of those decks that has its whole mana curve at 1. It actually, he plays, I'd say like 2 is kind of its money mana cost, actually. If you look at it, we have, it's I guess up and down the curve, it just has a lot of different plays. He's going to play Thalia here.
Yeah.
Just in case Gregg was thinking he was going to play any non-creature spells, Thalia is going to join Gaddock Teague. And he'll just pass the turn. Maverick, kind of similar to a Hate Bears strategy.
Yeah, it's got a little bit of that action going on. You have the Gaddock Teague, that's a Zenith target, and that's kind of just like in your last-ditch effort scenario where you would want to tutor for that against a combo deck. It's kind of awkward because Teague shuts down further Green Sun Zeniths, but the hope is that once it's in play, it is doing enough that even if you have some dead cards, it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, we see an attack for 4 from Gavin. He's going to crack fetch land here. And his goal is really just to stop Gregg from ever really making a play. You see his hand, he had a lot of those disruptive elements. You see a Trinisphere, another Chalice, Lodestone Golem. If Gregg had say, an Ancient Tomb very early in the game, he could have put a lot of pressure on Gavin here.
Right, and his hand didn't have any acceleration like that. You know, you just had 2 lands that each made 1 mana, but if you draw a Cloud Post, then you have a bunch of mana. You have Ancient Tomb, you have City of Traders. Even if you draw a 3rd land, you have access to Metalworker, you can play Grim Monolith. So, like, Gregg had a lot of draws that could actually just make him explode, and it just so happened that he didn't get there.
Yeah, and you have to keep some of those hands because his curve of disruption was actually very strong. You know, Trinisphere into Lodestone Golem is very difficult for most decks to deal with.
Oh, for sure. Like, whether or not you're a combo deck or a Delver deck or even something like Maverick.
I mean, you see this, that's like an interaction you see even in formats like Vintage, where, you know, there's like enough of these mana taxing effects and you can just shut down almost any strategy.
Yeah.
But as it is, Gavin is just going to continue beating. This time it's Dryad Arbor who joins the team with Gaddock Teague and Thalia. The Knight of the Reliquary does not swing, presumably to get more lands to help to further disrupt Gregg. We already saw 1 Wasteland to take out a card from Gregg. And now he's going to go ahead, sack a Savannah, and get another Wasteland, presumably.
Yeah. I mean, he got to Wasteland Gregg's Wasteland, and then Gregg didn't use the Wasteland in response just because Gavin already has a bunch of mana, and if you put another land in your opponent's graveyard, it pumps up the Knight again, which maybe he doesn't want to do because he doesn't want to get put on a 2-turn clock.
Yeah, as it is, there's very little interaction that Gregg has tonight of the Reliquary. It's just going to tap to blow up land for what you have to think is the rest of the game.
Right.
And this one should be in Dively's favor. I don't think Gregg's going to get to resolve another spell.
Yeah, me neither.
And there you have it. Gavin Dively, 1-0, is up a game on Mud. So I'm going to backtrack a little bit. And I said Mud's very good against the fair decks of the format. Maverick is actually, like Death and Taxes, has enough disruptive elements that it can actually deal with some of the more unfair things people do. Which side would you want to be on in this matchup?
So I played Maverick in a couple tournaments, and in one of them it always felt, it was just like scary playing with the deck because I had no force of will, nothing that could really stop my opponent, right? And somehow I always just like cobbled together a win. And it was using a lot of the things like Thalia and Wasteland and maybe Knight of the Reliquary into another Wasteland, and you're always on the edge of the seat because you're always just 1 top deck away from getting comboed out, kind of.
It's like in a format where your opponents are playing cards like, you know, Dark Ritual, Stoneforge Mystic, Brainstorm, Force of Will. It's like, it feels pretty scary to have your nut draws be things like, I'm searching up Savannah and playing a 2-1 for 2. You know, you feel like, well, what am I doing? Why did I, like, maybe this will work, but boy, my cards don't look as neat as my opponents.
Yeah. So Maverick ended up actually being pretty good for the tournament that I played it in. But like I said, I was deathly afraid every round. It's just like, this is so nerve-wracking. I'm not sure I can play this in any more future tournaments, right? And there are decks like Mud where it's like, okay, you might play this Chalice, you might play this Trinisphere, kind of slow me down. But depending on what Gregg is doing, if he's not threatening something with like a Kuldotha Forge Master into Blightsteel Colossus, like maybe you just play a Knight of the Reliquary and he can't deal with it. Yeah,
I mean, the thing about the Mud deck is to have these really explosive starts, right? To play all these lands that tap for 2, maybe 3. First of all, you're having a lot of restrictions on yourself. The main one being you have no colored spells in your deck, which, okay, that restricts you on to like, you were down to like 5% of Magic cards already.
Right.
So your ability to deal with creatures and like to do basic things, you know, I want to remove a creature, for example. That's actually pretty difficult. You know, you look at cards in Legacy, which can kill a creature in your deck. You like, okay, we have Karn, All Is Dust. Like, I guess you could play Dismember if you really wanted to kill a creature.
Yeah.
And then you get to really bad things, like, you know, you could Brittle Effigy one of them.
Sure.
Like,
yeah,
you know.
I think Gregg's plan mainly is to just go over the top. Play something like Kuldotha Forge Master. Well, I think plan A is actually to just Chalice, Trinisphere, Lodestone Golem, kind of lock them out, right? And if that doesn't work, something actually slips through the cracks, then you play Forge Master and you just go over the top. Maybe you can assemble Staff of Domination plus Metalworker, which could potentially make you infinite mana, draw you infinite cards. Or maybe you just tutor up a Blightsteel Colossus and kill them. And it's like, yeah, another Reliquary is cute and everything, but I'm going to put out this giant indestructible Infector and hope that that's good.
Yeah, and you have stuff like Sundering Titan to ramp into. You're using the fact that you have a lot more mana than your opponents to just muscle your resource advantage at them.
Right.
But it does mean when your draws don't come together, when your opponent has the right answer, a lot of times you're just cold, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, it is tough to come back if your opponent has a very good board position, right?
Yeah.
Because Gregg does have an All Is Dust. He has things like Karn Liberated, which maybe can help him come back. And then there's stuff like Metalworker, Staff of Domination, which you can set up, which is the combo finish. But other than that, if you're playing mostly a fair game, you get a little bit behind like he did in that game. I don't know, like I just don't see a way of his deck coming back. But the deck is not built to thrive in situations like that. It is built to get out in front of your opponent and make sure that you're never in that situation. And then if you get in that situation, okay, sure. You know, like we play best of 3. Hopefully that won't happen in the other 2 games.
Yeah, I mean, it did seem once Gavin had Knight of the Reliquary in play, like I didn't feel like Gregg even had outs anymore.
Yeah, he didn't.
And is Knight's just mostly going to be like that in the matchup, right?
Well, it can be, especially when Gregg was stuck on 2 lands for as many turns as he was, right? But if he has an abundance of mana sources and has been doing things, Knight is going to pale in comparison to things like Sundering Titan.
Okay. That's true. Sundering Titan, there is some of that there. So Gregg needs to have, he needs to get out in front. He doesn't really want to play from behind.
Yeah, I mean, that's why keeping that hand that he did in game 1 might seem kind of sketchy, but like I said, he has so many things that might allow him to just actually explode.
Yeah, 1 Ancient Tomb in the hand, 1 Soul Land, 1 Cloud Post, 1 Grim Monolith. You made a list of these cards, like any of them.
Even a 3rd land lets him cast Metalworker.
Yeah, and then it's, okay, if Gavin doesn't immediately kill the Metalworker, he probably just loses.
Right. I mean, which is even tough because Gregg has Chalice on 1, stopping Swords to Plowshares. Gavin did end up having a Kasali Pride Mage in his hand, so he could have potentially blown up the Metalworker, but then that means that the Pride Mage isn't necessarily being pointed at your Chalice or your Forge Master or anything else, so that's not really the end of the world either.
All right, looking at the sideboard, there are some weapons that Spano has against a creature deck. He does play cards like Ratchet Bomb. On top of that, he has extra copy of All Is Dust. How much of this matters against Maverick? It seems like your plan A is still your best plan.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think All Is Dust is kind of like the, in case of emergency, break glass thing. Maybe you play against something like Enchantress, where they have a bunch of weirdo permanents and you need an out.
Yeah, there's a chance that you just can't, they play something that you can't answer.
Right, but as far as a value Wrath against a deck like Maverick, I don't think that's necessarily what you want to be doing. I can see the appeal, though, right? Where if you have a Metalworker, you could probably just make a bunch of mana and blow up their entire board.
Sure. On the Maverick side, he probably gets a couple extra weapons. He, I imagine, can blow up some more artifacts.
There's an Oblivion Ring and a mini Enlightened Tutor package, but nothing great to get. There's no Null Rod or anything super hateful.
Yeah. With that, we are underway. Gregg Spano's on the play. This time his draw is going to be a little less fair. He starts the game on Cloud Post. It's the other locus in the deck, the mana-producing one. Gavin, once again, has Zenith into Dryad Arbor, so if Gregg's going to make 2 mana on turn 1, Gavin's going to go ahead and keep pace with 2 of his own.
He's going to try to, at least. It's tough when your opponent goes Cloud Post into Vesuva.
Yeah, Vesuva copying Cloud Post. So this Cloud Post already taps for 2, and starting as early as next turn, Gregg is going to have 5 mana available, if not more.
Right, and you play an ETB tap land, and then an ETB tap land, and then you're still able to play Chalice of the Void on 1. And This might be one of Gregg's best possible starts.
What can Gavin do here? We will see. It looks like he has a lot more lands. Some of them pretty awkward here. You see Maze of Ith drawn by Gavin. That feels almost like it's not a card.
Yeah, I mean, that's a card that you very much want as a tutor target with your Knight of the Reliquary, right? That's not a thing that you actually want to naturally draw.
Yeah.
But also, he didn't see many cards from Gregg in game 1, so there is certainly a possibility where he doesn't really know what Gregg is up to.
Yeah, he plays Thalia that turn, and we'll go back over to Gregg. we do see Gregg having boarded in the Ratchet Bomb. He has that available to him. He also can do a couple other things. He has Kuldotha Forge Master in his hand, along with Metalworker. So he can continue the ramp. He can make a Forge Master. A lot of lines, and I'm pretty sure all of them are decent here.
Yeah, I mean, you also see a Steel Hellkite, a Karn Liberated. There's certainly some merit to just playing the Forge Master. With Chalice on 1, you could try to threaten a Blightsteel Colossus kill next turn.
Yeah, and more often than not, that's what the Forge Master finds, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, it's just easy peasy, right? You know, you just sack some permanents, get this giant thing. The game should certainly be over at that point.
Yeah, because Maverick is a Swords to Plowshares deck, he may not go for it immediately. I mean, obviously you can't Swords now, but if he sacks the Chalice that's on 1, he would open his Blightsteel up to Swords to Plowshares. Remember, Blightsteel doesn't play around that card.
Yeah, I mean, I think ideally he was aiming for draw a land, play Metalworker, and then Ratchet Bomb with the additional mana to pay for Thalia, and then keep the Chalice in play.
Gavin's going to make a go of it here, though. Knight of the Reliquary was his play for the turn. If Gregg continues to brick on lands, the Knight might go after his mana base again. You saw Gavin also wastelanded away the Cloud Post.
And that cuts Gregg off of 3 mana.
Yeah, I mean, you think he's going to have to Metalworker now, right? Otherwise, all his mana is threatened. No, dude, you're right. He doesn't even have enough for the Metalworker anymore. Because now there's only 1 Cloud Post in play.
Yeah, plus with the Thalia in play, it doesn't look like Gregg could even cast a spell this turn.
Pretty huge wasteland. And this goes back to the turn where he cast Forge Master, right? He had, maybe if he casts Metalworker, the game works out differently. I mean, yeah, you can't know that the opponent's going to go Wasteland Knight. You know, that's...
Right, I think if your opponent had a Wasteland, you'd probably just use it on the Cloud Post, right? I mean,
yeah,
as soon as possible.
It would have happened. He's going to play a Chalice on 0, and now he's going to crack Kuldotha Forge Master. And, well, if we're going to fight over lands, he's going to fight over them harder. It's Thundering Titan is the card that he gets. And one way to shut off Knight and stop Knight from blowing up for Gregg's lands is for Gregg to blow up all the plains and forests in play.
Yeah, so Dryad Arbor, a forest, Bayou, the swamp. Caracas, you can't target, you know, but also it doesn't interact really with the Knight. Yeah, so then you have Wasteland to finish that off.
Yeah, Thundering Titan, when he enters or leaves play, blows up 1 land of each type. Basically, this guy just blows up all your opponent's basics.
Yeah.
Sometimes he hits some of your own too, but in this deck, he hits absolutely none of his own lands.
Yeah, this guy is, this deck featuring Thundering Titan is a way to break symmetry, right? Like this is the crowning achievement of this mud deck. It's like the one-sided Armageddon you.
Yeah, and I get a 7/10. So Gavin gonna have to rebuild, and the Mazavith, the somewhat maligned Mazavith there, turns out to be quite the card. It does keep Thundering Titan at bay.
It helps, right? You're not getting hit by the 7/10, but all Gregg really needs to do is draw some mana sources.
Yeah, it'll take a few mana sources from Gregg, though. And every time Gavin draws a forest or plains, that's another wasteland. Like, I'm not sure Gregg ever gets mana here.
Yeah. Well, Gregg could also just draw another wasteland. That might help. Get rid of the Mazavith.
Yeah. Instead, this time it's Gavin drawing the wasteland. We'll see if he decides to go put Gregg down to 0 lands. It's possible. Then they can both be on 0 lands.
Right.
I think ideally Gregg would get just enough mana to play that Metalworker.
Yeah, I think that's all he's trying to do at this point.
But that's no easy task when your opponent has Knight. You have to
you have to fade a ton of draw steps.
Yeah. Yep, Gavin will just put both players on 0 mana and pass back. So now we're in top deck wars of who can draw lands first. Gregg takes a turn. He does not draw one. Go back to Gavin. Gavin has a Savannah. He's the first one with a land, but it's only 1. You see he has Enlightened Tutor in hand. Can't cast it due to his own Thalia, though.
Well, he could add a mana, sacrifice the land with the Knight, get another mana, and then Enlightened Tutor, but what are you really tutoring for in this spot?
Yeah, I mean, you tell me you're looking at his deck. Maybe Sylvan Library is your best target?
Maybe potentially some sort of equipment. But even then, it depends on how big the Knight is.
Gavin certainly winning the top deck war. Gregg missed another land drop. Gavin drew Cavern of Souls. Cavern of Souls is set to human, but still no plays yet. And finally, Gregg gets a land. His is Glimmer Post. He will gain a life.
Value.
Value. We'll see. Remember, if Gregg's Thundering Titan dies, the Savannah goes away again. Well, it would be targeted. Gavin would get a chance to sack it. And we're going to see here Enlightened Tutor from Gavin. My money's on Sylvan Library here. If he wants to fight a top deck war, the library seems like a great way to do it. He's going to go with Oblivion Ring.
That's certainly not a bad one either. He can use, if he draws another mana source, he can use the Knight of the Reliquary to get up to 4 mana, actually get the Sundering Titan out of the way and start attacking.
Yeah.
And maybe you even use the Knight to sacrifice Savannah to find something like Wasteland to cast the Oblivion Ring, and then the Sundering Titan won't have anything to blow up, actually, because you have Caverner's Souls and whatever you search up, presumably a Wasteland.
Yeah, you want to get as few basics in play as possible. So for the turn, Gavin draws Oblivion Ring. He is close to the play you're mentioning, but he can't make it just yet. He needs another land, so he will pass. Can Gregg draw a couple lands before Gavin draws one? It's a tall order. Lodestone Golem, that's not going to do it. Was it? We see a bunch of cards he's boarded, and we see Spine of Ishsa in his hand as well. That one's kind of a fun number, a rare out of Mirrored and Besieged. You don't really see it too much, but you can infinite loop it to start vindicating your opponent every turn.
Yeah. Yeah, Mud has a pretty good end game with all these giant spells.
All right, back to Gavin. Can he hit land 3? It is another Knight. That's not going to do it, but Gavin may use his Knight trigger to make the second Knight here. In fact, he almost certainly will. So Knight of the Reliquary, he taps for 2 mana. Knight of the Reliquary sacks the Savannah to go get a different land. Cavern is set to human. A Knight is a human, so we're all set on that front. So 1 and 2 mana, this makes 3. It's Gaia's Cradle, so it actually makes 3/4.
So now he gets to play the second Knight, and a cool thing that Gavin can start doing starting next turn is attack with both Knights. And even if they're not big enough to take down the Sundering Titan, if Gregg blocks one of them, Gavin can maze his own Knight of the Reliquary to untap it, still get in some damage with the unblocked Knight, and then he can do that repeatedly over the next few turns. If Gregg ever attacks, it's like, okay, I'm at 20, I'll take 7, that's fine, and then I'll keep attacking with these Knights.
Yeah, the maze of Ith between the players, normally they get lost when they travel toward you, but the maze actually goes both ways. You can get lost going the other way.
Yeah, most people see maze just as a defensive card, but you can also use it somewhat offensively in this regard.
Not to mention when you maze a Knight, on top of that, you can then activate him, which is pretty neat. If you ever wanted to get an extra activation off your Knight, if you just had to, you could attack with him and maze him.
Right.
And now that he's gotten that, we're going to see what's cast by Gavin. It's 2 green, so a total of 4 mana. You have to think it's another Knight. In fact, it's not, though. He's just going to go Sword of Fire and Ice here.
Yeah, I think he tried to play the Knight. It might have been one of those things where you're like, I'll tap these 2 lands for green, and then you get Cradle, and then you can't play Knight.
So he may have just declared it wrong. It seemed
maybe.
like he wanted to play Knight there, but you do have to be careful when playing with non-basics that you're clear about what you're getting. Gregg, though, doesn't hit the land drop anyway. He draws Staff of Nin. And like I said, another, like not even a mythic, just like a rare from a random recent set that happens to be colorless and do some stuff.
Yeah, you know, every once in a while a set has this giant artifact, right? Like Staff of Nin was pretty powerful in Core Set Draft, right? You don't really think about that card seeing constructed play. It saw a little bit of standard play, but it's like, oh, well, that card is actually just reasonable in Legacy.
Yeah, it was decks that needed extra card drawing that didn't play blue occasionally would play Staff. So we're going to see the Knight pick up Sword of Fire and Ice, and it's actually big enough to swing through the Titan here. It's a 10-10 Knight. You see Gregg Spano going down to 8, takes 10 off the Knight, 2 more off the trigger. And I think Gregg has just missed too many land drops here, you see, as he draws a Kuldotha Forge Master. He had a window. He needed to get to Metalworker. That was the goal.
Yeah.
He just didn't get there.
It's kind of amazing how Gregg's draw started out so well, right? It was Cloud Post into Vesuva, Chalice on 1. Next turn, Wasteland, have 5 mana on turn 3. And then he played a Glimmer Post after that, but no other lands.
And if you're Gregg, you can see it in his face, too. I think he felt like that game got, he got unlucky and that game got away from him, right? Yeah. All it took was one, like he played Kuldotha Forge Master on his turn with 5 mana, thinking, okay, I'll have time to get this Metalworker down. Even if he wastelands me, all I have to do is draw a land and play Metalworker. It's fine.